Hey guys, so we've had some recent snow lately, and that inspired me to make a snowman. And this is just an example of what a prototype slash rough draft will look like. So let's go ahead and start with a circle, and a couple circles actually, because snowmen usually have those three shapes, right? So we're gonna go ahead and sketch those out, even though I know you guys know how to sketch, but let's go ahead and start to finish this thing. All right, and then we'll also use that sketch opportunity to make a top hat. So usually that's just a rectangle and then another rectangle on top. But then we'll revolve that so it'll look more realistic than just a square. All right, so once we have that, I want to show you one thing that we always need when we're revolving, which is a center line, because once we start to revolve, that while we have that line there in the center which shows us the axis point, it does not function as a line of revolution. So what we need to do is to have our own sketch line. So as you can see here, we select everything, right? But to no avail, because we cannot rotate it. So what we need to do is make our own center axis line. And if you're wondering why I'm outside with helicopters and gutters with rain, it's because I have kids inside who are yelling, and I would not be able to make a tutorial. Yelling in terms of they're playing around a lot. So let's go ahead and revolve those, and once we have that, we're going to do the top hat separately, just so we can work on it away from the main body. All right, once we have that, we're going to go ahead and switch the colors, but I'm not going to show too much of that. I'm just going to skip through what I did and just show you the end result, just so we can get those colors in. But let's go ahead and finish up some shapes, because remember, this is a rough draft, and we're going to do some really basic things just to give us a general idea of what we want in the future. So basically, I'm not a big sketch person in real life. Like, I cannot draw very well. So instead of that, I do my rough drafts in CAD, but I do rough models. So kind of like this, you do basic shapes, you do basic adjustments, and then once you get those, then you move on. So let's go ahead and make like the little scarf, and we'll change the color of that. Again, I was going to skip through this because you guys already know how to do that, but we'll make him look pretty good. Once we have that figured out, what we need to do is sketch on some details. And so before we can do that, we need to move the body up, just because I like to work in the center. But remember how much you moved it, so you can move it back later to bring it back to the center. So keep that in mind. Always remember how much you moved something. Let's go ahead and sketch the eyes, which is just basic circles. And just make them not too big, not too small, so they look right. And we're going to sketch this circle here for the nose, but we're going to do it slightly differently, and I'll show you why in a little bit. But for now, let's just go ahead and mirror the eye over. And then what we're going to do is project those circles onto the head shape, and we're basically going to just extrude those out and then fillet them so that they have that button shape. And it doesn't really matter exactly how much, as long as it looks proportionate, you know. And then we're also going to change the color later. But for now, let me show you a thing about the nose. So the reason we're not going to do the same thing for the nose is because, as you can see, once we project it, we'll delete that center line. We don't need it. If we pull it out, just like we did the eye, it makes a cone, but the opposite shape, because usually the nose is a carrot, right? So we need to change it up, because even scaling it down does not work. It makes like an oval shape at the end. This is not the shape we're looking for. So we need to delete that. So just go ahead and undo. And what we need to do is basically just extrude that sketch into the body. And once we do that, we make sure it's a new body so that we can work with it. And then we go ahead and hide the sketch so that we can, work on the body, because when you have a sketch on there, you can't really do it. And we scale it down, and that creates that cone shape that we're looking for. And then once we have that, we can go ahead and just delete that end piece if you want to make it like a perfect cone that's sharp. But let's go ahead and change the color, make it orange, and then the eyes black, just like the buttons usually are. But we're not going to go and make the holes, the details, because this is just a rough draft. Again, we're just sketching it out in a sense, just like you would a rough draft on a piece of paper. But let's go ahead and work on that smile, because, what's a snowman if he's not happy? So again, we start with just basic circles for buttons, but they're going to be smaller buttons. And typically you start at the center, so you can go away from there and keep everything even. And just to make our life easier, let's go ahead and use that pattern tool that everyone's talking about. And this is a recent addition, which I really like because I use this pretty often. But it keeps things even and nice, which I really like. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we can just mirror it over using our center line. This is why we have it. Alternatively, you could have just gone ahead and selected those and rotated it with a copy function. But you know, it's nice to have workarounds and different ways to do things. So I don't quite like how high that is. It looks kind of goofy, so we're gonna go ahead and make it lower. And as you can see here, you can't always move everything because you have like the little magnets in place, whatever. So you go ahead and just copy it over and then delete the other ones. Makes it easier. And now that we have something we like, we can go ahead and delete what we don't need so it's not in the way, and project those onto the head just like we did with the eyes. And you can just do it that way, and that way you don't have to do multiple selections. If you keep pressing the double thing, it's going to turn everything purple and just more of a mess. So just click that purple one, then keep going, and then switch it out later. So once we have those out, we pull them out and we fillet them exactly like the eyes. And sometimes we have those leftover pieces like you have in the center. Very often we can delete them. If they don't bother you, just leave them, because typically they're not in the way. And actually, sometimes extra faces are a benefit later down the road, but not always necessary. Let's go ahead and select those, change the color so we can match it to that button style. And now he looks pretty good, and he's happy. But we can still add a few more details. And what I like to do is step back and just observe your model so you can see what's wrong. And in this case, like, I see that the top hat is a little bit too small, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the size by scaling that out, just because to make it look more natural. And that's the benefit, like, of stepping back and seeing the big picture in your projects, because very often, especially in CAD, we're zoomed in like to the smallest details, and sometimes we forget about proportions because we're just so focused on minuscule things that nobody else sees except for us, right? So make sure you step back and look at your project. And for example, I'm looking here, and while it's a finished snowman, you know, we can do some more stuff. So let's go ahead and add some arms to make him look a little bit more lifelike and give him some life, basically. And we're going to go ahead and use the sweep tool for this, and we can accomplish that by basically just drawing a circle right there on the axis, and then rotating it 90 degrees so that we can sweep it on the line. The only thing is that we're going to have to do them individually, because you can't sweep in 3 different places at once. So let's go ahead and rotate that, as I mentioned. Make sure you line it up first, though, on the line, because otherwise it's going to rotate the wrong way. So line it up, and then use the sweep tool to go ahead and just follow through one of those twigs. And I'm going to show you why it's not going to work if we try in both places. So just go ahead and click next, sweep all the way, and then see if you try to sweep it again. First of all, you can't access that line because you can't see it unless you use the hidden lines feature. But it's just easier to go ahead and hide it. That way you don't have to, worry about it being there. And then once you just go ahead and sweep all of them, you simply union them together because it's already all in the same place, so it's connected. Just need to connect them as one. All right, so go ahead and hide this one as well and sweep that last one through. And we have our branches. Well, technically one branch, but once we are happy with what we have, let's go ahead and union those and move it over to meet where the snowman is. That way it's inside the body, because we have to shove the twig inside the snow. All right, and then we can go ahead and change the color to make it a wood style. So that looks pretty good. And I'm actually not going to do the other one, because I just realized we could just copy this one over and turn it slightly just to match the figure that we want. So let's go ahead and do that way instead. Save ourselves some time. Just move the axis so you can rotate it there, and then move it up. Make sure you don't have the copy feature on, otherwise it's going to make duplicates as you go. But now we have our little hands, and he's saying, "What's up?" So it's cool. This is turning out actually nicer than I even expected, because again, this is a rough draft, so typically rough drafts look even rougher than this. But I actually quite like this one. So Let's go ahead and do some finishing details. And that would be a bow tie, because what's a snowman without a fancy bow tie? And you only have to do one side again, because we could just mirror that over. It's going to be super simple. Let's go ahead and just extrude that triangle, fillet the edges. And let's go ahead and make it look even smoother and mirror that over to the other side. All right, once we have that, we can union them, and then we can change it to black because it will look better and more fancy. Right, he's going to a dinner party where he's going to melt from all the excitement. But let's go ahead and move that over to him and make it in the right place. Then we can connect it as one piece to the body by, again, using the union tool. So very often, like once you're doing these little simple projects, you get accustomed to using the tools and you find out new ways to use them. And this is the whole reason for these little tutorials. It's not because this project is super fancy or anything like that, but just so that you realize that when you start doing a project, you can start from a rough draft. It doesn't have to be a sketch on a piece of paper. You can literally sketch on the program. And it only took, what, 10 minutes to make this snowman? You know, obviously, if you want to make it more detailed, you'd have to spend a lot more time, but you can do it, you know. Sketch out your ideas and you can do it. I hope you guys learned something. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stick around. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.